Well, hello kids. Welcome to the Dill Learning Channel. Today we are going to talk about commas in a series. Commas in a series. Let's begin by identifying the definition. A comma is a punctuation mark. A comma is used to separate things in a sentence. I will repeat that. A comma is a punctuation mark. A comma is used to separate things in a sentence. Well, this is great because, a lot of people want to, or a lot of kids want to know, how do you use a comma when you want to say a lot of things? We call that a list. So you have a list of things or a list of items and you want to put it in a complete sentence. Well, you will use a comma to separate those items in your list. For example, if you were talking about apples, oranges, pears, and you would like to place that in a sentence so that it is listed in that sentence using commas, you would write, as you see for number 1, I like apples, comma, oranges, comma, and pears. I like apples, comma, oranges, and pears. So we had a list of 3 or more items. We have a list of 3 here. So that is another important piece of information that you need to understand. When you have a list of items or things, you use a comma or you use commas to separate that list when you have 3 or more items. You don't use a comma when you have 2. But you need to start using commas when you have 3 or more items that are listed. You also need to use the word and when you get to the very last, right before you get to the very last item on your list. So as you see in example number 1, pears was the last item within this listing. So we had to use and right before pears, before we conclude the sentence. So we did that here as well. In our example number 1 completed sentence. I like apples, oranges, and pears. Pears was the last thing that I spoke about in my listing, and pears was also the last thing I placed in my sentence. So when I got to that last thing that I wanted to share, I used the word and. Okay, let's look at example number 2. We are going to talk about celery, spinach, carrots. We will replace these hyphens with commas. And this is our list of items, or list of things that I want to talk about, but I want to put it in a complete sentence. So I wrote for my completed sentence for example number 2, celery, comma, spinach, comma, and carrots are vegetables that are healthy to eat. Celery, comma, spinach, comma, and carrots are vegetables that are healthy to eat. You notice carrots was the last item on my list of 3. So I had to place what here, kids? An and right before the end of my item, or the last item for that listing. Now here I used and I placed my list of items at the end of my sentence. Even if you placed your list of items at the beginning of your sentence, you still need to use and when you get to the last thing or item that you want to talk about from that list. And then you can conclude or continue writing the rest of your sentence. Now let's look at the word or. Okay, or. You can use or as well when you want to end or conclude your list of items. So let's look at example number 3. We're talking about yelling, screaming, loud noises. Well, loud noises is the last thing on my list. So I am going to use or right here. Okay? Or. So when I write my complete sentence, let's look at number 3 when we're writing the actual sentence. I don't like yelling, comma, screaming, comma, or any types of loud noises when I am sleeping, period. Yelling was on my list. Screaming was on my list. Loud noises was on my list. But before I got to loud noises, I used or because I knew that was the last item or thing that I was going to talk about. So you use or there. Okay, let's look at that sentence again. I don't like yelling, comma, screaming, comma, or any types of loud noises when I am sleeping. After I used or, and I wrote my last item on my list, then I concluded with the rest of what I wanted to speak about when I wrote my sentence. So all you need to remember is when you're writing commas in a sentence, you need to separate what is on your listing of things that you want to share about with commas, and you also need to use and or to conclude that listing when you are writing your sentence. Now here's one more pointer. It says a list of 3 or more is when you use commas. Oops, sorry about that. Didn't mean to cross out the more. But you could say apples, oranges, pears, strawberries, and apricots. It doesn't matter how many things are on your listing. You just need to make sure that you are ending it with and or when you conclude your listing. So you could talk about celery, spinach, carrots, okra, and broccoli. It doesn't matter as long as you end your last item right before that last item with and or and you separate those lists of items with commas. I hope that you have a clear understanding about commas in a series, and please share about the Dill Learning Channel. Remember, you can watch these videos over and over and over again until you understand at your pace. Until next time, goodbye.